Ifeoma's life took a sharp turn in her second semester at Lagos University, a season that began like a calm river but would soon gather the force of a flood. She was a village girl, raised on discipline, faith, and the hope of lifting her family out of poverty. The university, to her, was not just a place of learning, but a sacred altar where sacrifices of sleepless nights, hunger, and diligence would one day yield the crown of honor. But Lagos, like the ancestors always said, is a city with two faces. Eko bo bemi, sugwan eko tun bemi. Lagos can lift a man, and Lagos can ruin a man. It was under the broad shadow of the mango tree in the school compound that Ifeoma's path first crossed with Grace, a young, dark-skinned beauty whose presence carried both light and shadow. Grace appeared modest, the kind of girl parents pointed to as a shining example. Her books were neat, her scores brilliant, her smile disarming. But as the elders warn, a smooth river may hide crocodiles beneath. Grace was, in truth, a wolf draped in the wool of innocence. On that afternoon, Ifeoma sat cross-legged on the grass, her books spread around her, eyes locked on the dense text of medical notes. She was lost in her world of ambition when Grace's voice sliced through the quiet. "Hi, Ifeoma. You're here. Hockles. I've been searching everywhere for you." Ifeoma looked up, surprised, but smiling politely. "So sorry about that, dear. I've been reading." Grace tilted her head, her lips curving into a sly smile. "I see. Thoughtful. I really admire how you take your studies seriously. But tell me, do you think burying your head in books will cover your finances as a medical student?" She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Look, in this era, what matters is results. People don't care how you achieve it. What they care about is the result you bring to the table. You're far away from your village. This is Lagos. Eko o niba joro o. Shine your eyes. Your mates are driving cars, living in duplexes, sending money to their parents in the village. While you're here being more Catholic than the Pope, you better shine your eyes." Those words hung in the air like poison wrapped in honey. Ifeoma's heart shifted uneasily. She remembered the teachings of her parents, the elders' constant refrain that the road of shortcuts often leads to the forest of regret. Yet, she also knew her reality. At her workplace, a small campus shop where she worked to sustain herself, the manager had failed to pay her fully for weeks. Each time she asked, excuses poured like broken rain. "Sighs. Sales are low. We'll balance it soon." The half payments she received barely covered her meals, let alone the endless handouts and textbooks required for her course. Medical school was a lion's den that demanded not just brains but resources, and resources were what she lacked. It was in this desperate gap that Kelvin walked into her life. He was her first boyfriend, the first man who looked at her not with pity but with admiration. He was gentle, kind, and willing to help her buy the handouts and textbooks she couldn't afford. Ifeoma did not step into his arms blindly. It was Grace's voice echoing in her head that tipped the scale. Grace had planted a seed of practicality. Results, not methods. And so, against her better judgment, Ifeoma consented to date Kelvin. But even in the warmth of Kelvin's care, a memory pricked her heart. It was Mary, her friend back home, who once boasting, "I won't settle for broke guys." Mary's words echoed like a drumbeat in her chest, fueling her doubts. Kelvin, though kind, was not financially stable. His help was a drizzle when she needed a storm. Soon, Ifeoma found herself lured further down Grace's philosophy. She began dating other men, men with cars, men with money, men who could turn her immediate lack into instant abundance. The transformation was not slow, nor was it subtle. It was a storm that swept through Ifeoma's life like harmattan fire leaping from hut to hut. By her third year in Lagos University, the girl who had once sat under the mango tree with books pressed against her chest, whispering village prayers for success, was gone. In her place stood a figure Lagos itself had sculpted, bold, restless, reckless, a Lagos socialite whose laughter was now drenched in alcohol, whose lips often tasted of smoke and men, whose name was whispered not as a blessing by village mothers but as a warning. The elders say, thoughtful. When the moon forgets its place, it is mistaken for the sun. And so, Ifeoma, the once bright moonlight of her village, became a shadow, an eclipse of the very dream she once embodied. At first, her descent was masked in necessity. Medicine was not just a course, it was a mountain of financial demands. Handouts, textbooks, practical fees, costs her parents, still struggling in the red soil of the village, could never shoulder. Her small job in the city, already paying her irregularly, barely fed her. Hunger and ambition gnawed at her together, and Grace's words rang like a curse in her ears. This is Lagos, Eko Onibaje. Shine your eyes. So she did. She met men not with her heart but with her needs. A smile here, a feigned laugh there, until a handshake became a dinner, and a dinner became a night. At first she told herself it was survival. A medical student could not read on an empty stomach. But soon, survival became appetite, and appetite became addiction. Lagos tongues began to say she was wider, a woman now with eyes too sharp, skirts too short, and nights too long. Then came the rich young man, smooth, reckless, with money that smelled of power and corruption. He bathed her in gifts, jewelry that glittered under club lights, clothes that shimmered on her restless body, bottles of champagne that flowed like rivers, lines of powder that burned her nostrils and numbed her conscience. With him, Lagos nights opened like a carnival of sin. Clubs pulsed with beats until dawn, her laughter mixing with smoke, sweat, and neon lights. Her books lay abandoned on a dusty shelf. Classrooms became strangers. Who would ask after her? She was a village girl in the city, orphaned of family guidance, no father's hand to steady her, no mother's eyes to watch her, no brother's warning, no aunt's counsel. Freedom had become a curse, a wind carrying her deeper into the forest. Mary, her once steadfast friend, had tried. She confronted Ifeoma one night, her eyes heavy with both anger and sorrow. "Ifeoma," she said, "you are not the girl who came from the village with dreams. You are throwing yourself away. Every day a new man, every night a different face. You are turning my house into a hotel." But Ifeoma, already numb with rebellion, heard only noise. Pride hardened her heart. She left Mary's home that night, slamming the door not only on friendship, but on the last remnant of her old self. As Ifeoma's fingers pressed against the cold handle of Mary's door, a tremor ran through her, small yet insistent, like the wind whispering through the ancient baobabs of her village. The door slammed behind her, a sharp, decisive sound, echoing through the narrow corridor of the apartment complex, a punctuation to the tumult she carried within. Her heels clicked against the tiles, each strike a drumbeat of contemplation, a metronome marking the tempo of her racing thoughts. Lagos stretched before her in shadow and light, the cityscape alive with distant honks, murmurs of the restless night, and the occasional laughter that seemed both alien and familiar. She walked swiftly, clutching her bag as if it contained not just her belongings, but fragments of her soul, the remnants of a girl who had once arrived in this city with trembling hands and boundless hope. Her mind, a theater of memory and regret, replayed the events that had brought her to this precipice. She thought of the journey from her village, a small town where the river sang lullabies and elders spoke in riddles that shaped destinies. She remembered her father's hands, calloused yet gentle, lifting her high as he spoke the ancient wisdom of their people. He who does not know where the river begins will be lost when it meets the sea. Lagos, she realized now, was the sea, vast and unforgiving, and she had arrived like a river without clear banks, meandering, vulnerable, seeking a path. Mary's words, sharp as the edge of a knife honed on stone, had pierced the veil she had so carefully drawn over her past. They awakened memories she had buried beneath layers of survival and pretense. The reckless days of her early time in Lagos, the nights of careless laughter, the compromises she had convinced herself were necessary, now emerged with painful clarity. She felt the weight of her parents' sacrifices pressing upon her, as if the invisible hands of ancestors were gently scolding her for straying from the path they had envisioned. They had brought her here, entrusted her to the sprawling chaos of the city, and yet their capacity to provide had ended, leaving her to navigate survival alone. In that silence of self-reflection, Ifeoma understood that survival alone had become both her shield and her chain. Her apartment, modest yet a sanctuary, smelled faintly of old wood and unwashed laundry, a reminder of the life she had carved from necessity. She sank onto the edge of her bed, the cushions yielding to the tension in her shoulders, and let the questions pour forth like rainwater from a burst vessel. Why had she chosen this path? Was she merely fending for herself, or had she abandoned the ideals of the girl who had once believed in purity of intent? The answers hovered just beyond her grasp, elusive as shadows in the corner of a dimly lit room. A knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts, abrupt yet grounding, and brought a measure of reality crashing back into her contemplation. Grace entered, the familiar rhythm of her presence both comforting and accusatory. Her friend's eyes, keen and unwavering, searched Ifeoma's face, reading the story etched in her silence. "Ifeoma, what's up now? I've been calling your number, but you haven't been picking. Are you okay?" Concerned. Grace's voice was a tether, pulling Ifeoma from the labyrinth of her own mind. "I am," muttering. Ifeoma murmured, voice soft yet tinged with the faint tremor of unease. "I'm just not feeling so well." Grace tilted her head, the question lingering in her eyes like a blade suspended in air. Curious. "Why? What is wrong with you?" Ifeoma exhaled slowly, the city's pulse outside now a muffled drum, a heartbeat synchronizing with the thrum of her own. Sighs. "Nothing really," she said, though her words betrayed her. "Today I went to Mary's apartment. I went to pick some of my things and we had a heated argument." The confession hung in the room, thick with unsaid meanings. Grace's gaze sharpened, sensing the gravity behind each syllable. "Do you think I'm doing the right thing?" Whispering. Ifeoma's voice was barely above a whisper, yet it carried the weight of her soul's questioning. The things she said, they made me reflect on everything. On how I came to Lagos, on the Ifeoma then and the Ifeoma now. She said I had changed, but I can't feel it myself. I am only trying to fend for myself, since my parents are unable to. That's all. I am just surviving. In that moment, Ifeoma's thoughts spiraled, intertwining with the wisdom of generations. A child who seeks only bread may forget the taste of honey. Survival had been her bread, integrity her honey long forsaken. She realized with a pang that stung deeper than the night's chill that Mary's words were not just criticism. They were a mirror, reflecting a girl she had tried to hide, a reminder of both vulnerability and resilience. Grace stepped closer, her presence a stabilizing force, yet her words cut with the precision of truth. She did not offer comfort, not yet. Instead, she held the lens up to Ifeoma's life, forcing her to see herself as both the hunter and the hunted in a city that demanded vigilance. And there, in that quiet, dimly lit apartment, the night outside whispering the lullabies of the restless city, Ifeoma understood the duality of her existence. The girl who had arrived with dreams too fragile for Lagos's steel, and the woman she had become, forged in compromise, ambition, and necessity. Her heart beat with cautious resolve, aware that each decision, each step, carried the weight of ancestral eyes watching, guiding, judging. The conversation with Grace was more than dialogue. It was a confrontation with destiny itself, a philosophical reckoning framed in the language of the city and the ageless wisdom of her forebears. Ifeoma sat still, letting each word sink in as the night deepened, heavy with anticipation, uncertainty, and the quiet promise that every ending carried the seed of a beginning. "I would not be doing what I am doing now," I would not be living this life that I am living now. I would not be fending for myself, voice quivering. Ifeoma's voice quivered as the words spilled out unfiltered, raw, like rain cascading down a barren cliff. The city outside hummed with life, motors revving, distant laughter, the insistent chatter of Lagos's ceaseless pulse. But within her apartment, time seemed to slow, holding its breath as she confronted the weight of 17 years transformed into this crucible of independence. She closed her eyes and saw herself, 17 years old, leaving her father's house. A child on the precipice of adulthood, her small hands clutching dreams fragile as the morning mist. Thoughtful. Okay, how old was I when I left my father's house for Lagos? I was only 17, a 17-year-old. Shivers. She shivered at the memory, the innocence of youth colliding with the unyielding reality of a city that devoured the naive. Her father had assured her that the monthly allowance would follow, a lifeline she believed in with the faith of a child who trusts the sun to rise every morning. Yet now, that lifeline had faltered, leaving her adrift, responsible for her survival in ways she had never anticipated. Murmuring, "Now I am only trying to fend for myself and maybe he's not happy for me." "Sigh," she murmured, the words coated with guilt and bewilderment, a duality she could neither reconcile nor escape. She thought of Grace, silent beside her, watching, listening, a witness to the raw confession. What did her friend see in her eyes? Fear, determination, or the tender vulnerability of a girl who had been thrust too early into the crucible of self-reliance? "I don't understand, Grace." Voice lowering, Ifeoma continued, her voice lowering to a reflective murmur. "So now, what does this mean? Are you giving ear to what Mary has been telling you? Are you trying to reconsider your footsteps? Or are you trying to go back to the Ifeoma I knew?" Hands trembling, her hands trembled as she gestured into the empty space between them, as though the ghosts of her past self hovered there, waiting for reconciliation. Grace's eyes, unflinching, met hers with the cold clarity of truth. Steady voice. "Look, let me tell you," she said, voice steady and unyielding. "The Ifeoma I knew was a disgrace. I'm sorry to say this to you, all right? I'm totally sorry, but I'm going to be blunt with you." The words landed like stones in Ifeoma's chest, each one a reminder of vulnerability and the harsh realities that had sculpted her. The Ifeoma of the past, hungry, uncertain, struggling under the weight of unfulfilled promises, was laid bare before her. Grace annoyed. The Ifeoma I knew back then was a disgrace, was a nobody, was a hungry girl who could not fend for herself, who could not even buy handouts, in fact, who could not even pay her transportation. Talk more of handouts, textbooks, feeding, accommodation. The city seemed to lean in closer, the streetlights casting long, judgmental shadows through the window, mirroring the scrutiny she now faced within. Her mind's eye conjured the image of the girl she had once been, a village girl with stars in her eyes, yet draped in garments too few for a city so vast. Who knew only the simplicity of one bra, one hairstyle for 6 months, and 3 dresses that became the signature of her survival. She had moved through the semesters like a ghost among students, her presence barely acknowledged, yet her spirit silently resisting, enduring, learning. Grace chuckles. The Ifeoma I knew back then was a village girl who did not know what Lagos was all about. Who is locally dressed with one bra, one hairstyle for 6 months, had only 3 different dresses for 2 semesters. Laughing. The whole university knew her with these 3 dresses. In that moment, her past and present collided in a cinematic burst of realization. She could hear the whispers of ancestors in the cadence of the night. A child who leaves the village with nothing but courage carries both chains and wings. Ifeoma understood now, in a way only the nights of loneliness could teach, that survival was not shame, and that the choices carved from necessity carried wisdom beyond immediate comprehension. Each thread of memory, each pang of regret, was both burden and teacher, guiding her toward a destiny that balanced resilience with reflection, ambition with conscience. Her body slumped onto the bed, the weight of truth pressing her shoulders to the mattress. Eyes wide open, staring at the faint glow of the streetlights filtering through the curtain. She felt the pulse of the city beneath her, a reminder that life waited for no one, that survival was relentless. And yet, in the reflection of her struggle, she glimpsed the nascent strength of the woman she was becoming, unyielding, reflective, and irrevocably alive. Grace's eyes bore into Ifeoma like the midday sun piercing the Lagos sky, unrelenting, exposing every hidden thought, every fragile hesitation that lingered in her heart. Her voice, steady yet edged with a quiet intensity, carried the force of generations, as if the wisdom of ancestors had found a vessel through her lips. Grace annoyed. "If I'm honest, let me tell you, this is the 21st century, okay?" Exasperated. "We are in the 21st century now. Everybody has opened their eyes." The walls of the apartment seemed to draw closer, their silence amplifying the truth that pressed against Ifeoma's chest. Her conscience stirred, restless, uncertain. Grace firmly, "Why are you even blaming your parents? You actually have other siblings, right? You are not the only person. Don't you even pity your parents?" Her words dropped like steady drum beats, echoing the Yoruba proverb, "Even the tallest tree owes its shade to the forest that bore it." Grace's tone was not cruel, it was deliberate, designed to cut through the haze of excuses and stir the ember of responsibility. Grace exasperated. "And why are you allowing Mary's words to get to you? Why? You have other siblings, and all your life your parents have only been caring for you. What about them? Don't you think you're being selfish here? Your parents brought you this far. They helped you write JAM. They brought you to school. They saw you through your first semester. And now you want to blame them because they can't keep sending you monthly allowance?" The air grew heavy, and Ifeoma felt each sentence like a stone sinking deep into her conscience. Grace, appalled, "Ifeoma, where is your conscience? When you have what you can use to get yourself money, when you can use what you have to get what you want from men, where is your conscience? Shouldn't you be helping your parents now? Shouldn't you be helping your siblings? At this point, you should be supporting them. They've tried for you already." For a moment, Grace's voice softened, weighted with the echo of her own battles. Grace sighs. "Do you know that my own parents didn't even help me write my JAM? Talk more of enrolling me in school. I suffered, I hustled, I had nobody to help me. But you? Your parents brought you this far, and now you want to blame them? For what?" The silence that followed was sharp, alive, until Grace's eyes hardened again, narrowing into a warning that brooked no compromise. Grace, annoyed, "Wait, are you telling me you want to go back to your old self?" Exasperated, "Ifeoma, look, let me tell you." Emphatic, "Hunger will just kill you. Hunger will kill you." Frustrated, "Hunger will just kill you." The words pounded like drums in the night, relentless, inevitable. Her voice then carved the final line between them, sharp as fire. Grace sternly, "If you decide to go back to the Ifeoma I used to know, please, don't call my line again." Disgusted, "Because I won't be part of that primitive community, all right? Don't call my line again." The words lingered, hanging heavy in the sir like the judgment of unseen ancestors. Ifeoma's chest heaved, her heartbeat rattling against the cage of her ribs. And in that suspended moment she felt the full cost of retreat, the peril of choosing regret over survival. The truth had been spoken, and its echo could not be undone.